thought I'd just do a quick PSA about how to prepare 70% ethanol the right way, as well as some tips. What do you say? Well, I say yes. So basically, in the lab, we use 70% ethanol solutions a lot as a disinfectant. And so we can spray it on surfaces, and what it'll do is it'll denature, so it'll unfold and mess up the proteins and the lipids of little microbes. And you might think, okay, well, if ethanol does that, why don't we use 100%? Well, it turns out 70% ethanol is better because, well, what happens if you have 100% is it kind of just meets the surface and it denatures everything on the surface, and then you get like this crusty, like filmy stuff on the surface that you can't reach underneath. Plus it like evaporates too quickly, and the water is going to help it like penetrate and actually be active. So we typically make a 70% solution. But you might think, okay, so if I want like 100 mils, like 70 of ethanol and 30 of water, right? Wrong. So actually, when we talk about 70%, that's talking about volume. So volume of ethanol compared to total volume. And the water and ethanol, their volumes aren't additive, because what happens when you mix them together is that the ethanol kind of sneaks into some spots in the water network, and so it takes up less space than the volumes that you put in. So if you add 30 to 70, you're going to get something less than 100. So the right way to do it is to add your 70 mils to a graduated cylinder, and then fill up to the final volume of 100, because that's what the volume percentage is based off of. So if you've been doing it wrong, don't worry. It's typical, like for most of the things that we're doing, like for making disinfectant, it's really no big deal if it's a little off. There's some wiggle room in like what's most effective for acting as a disinfectant, and if you make it the other way, it's not like it's a big deal, so don't freak out. But if you really do care about the exact concentration, or then for future reference, you should be doing it the other way, where you fill up, where you go to the final volume rather than just separately measuring the water and the ethanol and mixing them together. You can also make marks on your bottle if you go from like the bottom of, if you always have it so that you use the bottle till the end. So keep like 2 bottles so that one of them you can use all the way to the end without having to, like, in the middle of an experiment, run out of ethanol and not have any. Okay, backup bottle. And then you can fill it, you can measure out what you need, then mark a line, and basically do it with water first. So mark out like 70 or whatever where the ethanol level will be, and then where the final level will be. And then you have a shortcut for filling it. That's not the only shortcut though. So often, instead of dealing with like pure ethanol to start with, we're dealing with an ethanol solution. Often 190 proof ethanol. So this isn't pure ethanol, it's already ethanol with some water in it. So proof. So basically, the ethanol, pure ethanol, is what we say like 200 proof. You might have heard of proof from like alcoholic drinks and things. Basically, proof is going to be 2 times the weight, 2 times the volume percentage. It's really weird. So basically, if you have 200 proof ethanol, so absolute ethanol, this is going to be 200 divided by 2 is 100, so it's 100% ethanol. If you have 190 proof, well, then you have 190 divided by 2, 95%. So that's 95% ethanol. And you can get this ethanol cheaper because, well, it's harder to get out that last 5% of water. And if we're going to be diluting it in water, we can use this lower percentage. But now this is going to mess up our calculations, because now, even if we do it the right way and we fill 70 mils of ethanol and then fill it up to the 100 milliliter mark, we're not going to have a 70% solution because we're started with a 95% solution. So you could get all like mathy about it and do C1 V1 equals C2 V2, so the initial concentration times the initial volume equals the final concentration till the final volume. And if you're trying to calculate some sort of exact final volume, then that's the way to go. But if, say, you just need I need around 100 mils. Well, then what you can do is take a shortcut. So take the percentage of the ethanol. So if it's 190 proof, that's going to be 95% ethanol. And then so we want the final to be 70%. Actually, if what you do is you measure out 70 mils of your 95% ethanol and then fill it to the 95 line, 95 milliliters, well, then you get a 70% ethanol solution, and this will work for whatever percent you start with. So if you start with an 80%, then you would do 70 mils to 80 mils, and that would give you your ethanol solution of 70%. If you look at the math, you can see that it's because you're canceling out the various things and being left with this. So of course this isn't giving you exactly what you want potentially. If you say, but you can easily like multiply it by a factor. If you want to get like around 500 milliliters, well, you can get, if you start with 90%, 95%, you can get to 475. If you multiply it by 5, what you would be adding. So you can multiply it. Or you can always go back to your C1V1 equals to 2V2 if you need to be more exact. But remember that ethanol and water, they do not, their volumes are not additive. You're going to lose volume when you mix them together. So you want to make sure that your final volume is the volume of like what you think it should be. So if you're thinking if you're calculating based on having 100 milliliters, you're going to have to add more than 30 milliliters of water, which is why you want to do it the measuring method. So measure out your ethanol, then add water to the line in the graduated cylinder. And just some other tips about making ethanol is that ethanol is flammable, so make sure you label your bottle that says it's flammable. Also make sure that you write out the full name, ethanol, not just ETOH. That's like one of those safety things. And when you put the labels or any sort of label, like remarks or whatever, ethanol is going to be able to dissolve normal Sharpies. So use like a lab marker that's resistant to solvents like ethanol. You can also tape over it with like packaging tape, or if you have extra like PCR films, those work nicely. Or like crystal screen films, only if you have like extra used old ones or something, so you're not like wasting money. But so super duper helpful, and now you know how to make it the right way. But remember that, don't freak out if you've been making it the wrong way, because you'll probably still be okay.